But for those of you who don't know, this is Navy Senior Chief and actual Patriot, Malcolm Nance, that we are fortunate enough to have on the show. For those of you who don't know, Nance served in the United States Navy from 1981 to 2001 as a U.S. Navy specialist in naval cryptology. Nance was involved in numerous counterterrorism, intelligence, and combat operations, which happens to make him far more qualified to be Secretary of Defense than the current Muppet warming the seat at the Pentagon. Malcolm Nance has authored 9 books like Terrorist Recognition Handbook, An End to Al-Qaeda, The Terrorists of Iraq, Defeating ISIS, The Plot to Hack America, Hacking ISIS, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, The Plot to Betray America, and They Want to Kill Americans, which can all be found on Amazon. In 2014, he founded and became the executive director of the I always say this wrong. Asymmetric, thank you, project on strategy, tactics, and radical ideologies, which is based in Hudson, New York. And on April 18th of 2022, Nance revealed that he had joined the Ukrainian Foreign Legion back in March. So, brother, thank you for your service and for giving us a little bit of your time tonight.
Well, I'm glad I could get this thing working. If one of you download Microsoft Edge,
bro, we're usually 10 minutes late, and it usually has to do with video and audio.
It's always there.
I gotta tell you, and you're on West Coast time. What's the matter with you?
Well, he's in New York.
I'm New York.
Yep, he's in New York.
I said we're doing Eastern. So.
Yep. So it's me.
You're
I'm the one that
obviously
screws
just
it
staying
up.
up late so you can go clubbing.
There you go,
kids.
Man. Those days are long gone.
I didn't say you. It's 5 o'clock in the evening for you. You're getting your Blue Plate special.
Oh, there you go.
When you're done here,
I gotta cook when I'm done.
Is that where you are, LA?
No, we're in Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, Tucson. Oh,
yeah, but we don't
nice
do
place.
the daylight savings, so
we're my favorite moment.
We're on LA time.
Oh yeah.
I wish I had known. I was out at the book festival last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The one in Tucson?
I spoke there. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I didn't even know that, or I would have gone.
It was great. That's a great thing to go to anyway.
My wife and I were going to go because she's a huge reader. So we were actually going to go.
Anything that celebrates books, you should get your happy ass out there.
Oh yeah,
so,
absolutely. No, we're big book people here. Yeah. Well, we were just talking about Pete Hegseth. And I think hopefully you can come in and kind of button it up for us, because I think we've kind of, I don't want to say we beat a dead horse, but I think since we have you on, it'd be more interesting and more beneficial to talk about what you've seen on the ground, more in Ukraine, especially with what's happening in the last few days with and today with Marco Rubio coming out and saying and not showing up to a meeting. With the EU basically telling them to kick rocks. So hopefully we can talk about that. But real quick, I just wanted you to give your, with your experience and everything, what's your take on this whole Pete Hegseth thing?
Well, I mean, you're right about one thing. Both you and I are more qualified than he is to be in that job. I can tell you right now, I'm way more qualified than him. He was a National Guard major, a National Guardsman. Okay, he was not active duty. He went on active duty. He's one of those guys who wanted who wanted those augmentation slots.
Yeah.
So that he could go out there with the big boys and play with big boy units. And the Guard does a lot of deployments. The Guard does real deployments.
Yeah, they do.
But and they are essentially, what is it? The extra 3 or 4 divisions that the Army uses on the regular now. But it does leave something about his professional development. So it's sort of like his Fox News hosting. I mean, it's like saying I should be the head of NBC News because I was on MSNBC for 7 years as a guest. Well, that's a lot more experience than he has. His capacity to even understand that, number one, he's not qualified for the job.
Yeah,
it's just if you don't know your limits of expertise and you just take it because you're honored someone has asked you, well, then you're a moron. You should know just how far you should be going in life. The man
Yeah.
is a well-known drinker. He's very well known over at Fox for drinking.
Yeah.
By the way, full disclosure, before I was at MSNBC, I was a regular Fox News guest when I lived in Washington, D.C., with back when they had journalists, right,
Yeah.
over there. And actually, it was not with Tony Snow, but I was on Fox News every Saturday, like clockwork, for almost a year. And they have those producers that push you into doing things, and then they have those producers who are straight line. They got rid of all the straight line producers, but even as a service member, as someone who knows, the man who was just there in the job was a 4-star general who
Yeah.
worked his way up from the ground level. And it is insulting that Hesketh said that that General Austin was there and he was coming into the Pentagon, Hesketh, to put some boots on the ground experience at it. Austin had the Silver Star.
Yeah.
Yes,
It
sir.
is a combat award
Yes,
for
sir.
valor. You don't get the Silver Star as an end of tour award or a deployment award like some Bronze Stars, right?
Yep.
Bronze Star for meritorious achievement. I just felt that was insulting. The man was a ground up leader. He started as a second lieutenant. He went all the way through multiple wars as a senior combat commander, a man who understood. One sec, I just have to close the door here.
Yeah, no worries. And the interesting part about that
we would have had
is
a Beagle storm right
the
there.
guy that replaced him, General Kane, who was put into that position.
Boy.
The kicker is he needed a waiver
Yeah.
for the
'Cause he's
position because he
unqualified.
didn't meet the minimum qualifications. So
Man's
you're
a-
kicking
was
out
a
an
2-star.
overqualified black man, and
Mhm.
you're kicking him out of the position and putting in a mediocre white man
Underqualified
that
white
didn't
man.
even meet all the qualifications, signing a waiver to make that. Like that's just infuriating.
I mean, it's very.
First off, full disclosure there, right? I mean, Kane has been tapped for the job as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Yep.
And his job is really to purge the Pentagon of Milley, right?
Yes.
Of General Milley and all the Milleyisms,
Yep. And his influence.
which we happen to know as American military values that have been treasured since the American Revolution. And Kane thinks he's coming in to turn the military into a form of Air Force special operations that's going to be a group of people that will love and cherish Donald Trump by putting in all this. Are we allowed to use naughty words here?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. I mean, putting in all this, this ridiculous belief that they are going to turn them into a more lethal combat machine. I don't know when the last time you guys have been around the Pentagon when it was in combat operations, but we're pretty damn lethal when we want to be and where we need to be.
Right.
And that these people have this, I don't know where to even describe it. It's not even a band of brothers, right? Band of brothers had considerate, thoughtful combat leaders. One of my favorite truisms from that unit that fought is one of the most popular guys in the show, right? I believe it was the XO of the company, who was the guy with the VAT 69 alcohol in his case, never fired his rifle during the war, right? He was a company level intelligence officer, company level executive officer, and that wasn't his job, right? But these guys were out like, I don't know if you saw that tweet yesterday from what's his name, Mark Wayne Mullins,
Oh,
right?
God.
Who goes out there, we're going to storm the beach. We're going to lay down covering fire. We're going to do this, we're going to go and seize breach the line. And the guy's a freaking plumber. Never served in the military, but this concept of the movies as a guide for what real fighters are like is what's supposed to go on here. Now, back to Hedges. Not even qualified for the job, a freaking newly promoted National Guard major, which makes him a company grade officer. He is not a flag grade officer. He's not a field grade officer. He never commanded a brigade, a regiment, a division, a corps, right? Or
I don't
a
think he's even.
theater.
I was gonna say, or a
Austin
banquet,
commanded all of those. What's that?
or a banquet. I don't think he's really
Or a
commanded it.
banquet.
Like, let's be
I'm sure.
serious.
No. Maybe he didn't organize one, but he's certainly been. See, that's his thing,
He's
right?
certainly
It's just
been
like, oh, I was in the Army, so that qualifies me to run the freaking Army. He's a freaking joke.
Yes, but it's
Again.
mediocrity. It's the
Uh-oh.
mediocrity. You know,
Uh-oh.
it's he cussed out the microphone too much.
He cussed out, and
See, Ryan rants only work for you, man. If
they
I
only
do a
work
lot,
for
Ryan
me.
goes out.
Apparently, the camera only likes me. No,
but the mediocrity of it all. Like when you
that's
look at the
that's
people,
what upsets me the most about it.
Yeah.
It really is. You know, it spits in the face of people like Malcolm, you know, and the people who have been on the
or
ground.
you.
You know, I don't like throwing myself in there because, you know, I was very fortunate. I think I did 2 years on a freaking tropical island working on fighter jets and watching the coolest planes on Earth land and take off. And
2 years more than Pete.
Now that's true. But I just, you know, I don't want to mislead folks. Like, you want to compare brain pans to brain pans. You know, Malcolm's been around a lot longer than I have, and he's got the experience you want to actually listen to. You know, people need to speak on the things that they know, and they need to leave it at that. And I try my best to do that.
But we know Mega just speaks. They don't really actually. They're not there.
Well, again, let's go back to, if you don't mind me, you know, we talk a lot about how we prep for the show.
Yeah.
And that, you know, people, when the few times we've gotten on each other on the show, people are like, oh my God, what's happening? And we just laugh because we're like, man, y'all should hear us talk offline. And, you know, I don't want to say we got into it, but, you know, we were having a good heated conversation about why liberals keep losing, you know, and the agenda and that kind of thing. And I brought up the point of, you know, The Political Brain, which is a book I've mentioned a couple of times on the show. It talks a lot about, you know, why Al Gore lost, why Bush won, you know, why Republicans approach wins elections. And it really, you know, digs down into policies and facts don't win elections.
Yeah.
And I'm paraphrasing a 200 and something page book, but, you know, it's basically you have to appeal to the emotion. Well, guess what appeals to emotions? When somebody like Mark Wayne Mullins comes out and starts screaming, you know, patriotic, you know, whatever. And again, another story I've told for those who've gone through boot camp, you know, when you go to church on Sundays, which is the only break you get, they usually played some kind of video of, you know, like C-130s dropping bombs with, you know, the chaff and flares going off that look like, you know, angels. And, you know, you're sitting there thinking that you're doing this righteous, you know, thing. And later, as you probably get older, and at least for me, retrospectively, I look back and I'm like, wow, those were cult tactics. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of that same stuff today, just with a MAGA twist.
Yeah.
And, you know, the military is very based in cult tactics. And I think that's why a lot of veterans and people in the military that aren't MAGA, you know, wackos, they can look at this and go, this feels very familiar. And here's why it feels familiar.
There's a very fan base of like this is a sports arena or sports team, and that's really where Mega really. I mean, because when you think about wearing a jersey, right? Like when you
it's and like being a Lions fan when they're losing.
Exactly. Like it's literally rocking Detroit Lions gear, and you're like, okay, but here we are. But when you look at Mega, they are proud to wear that brand, and they
even
are
when
proud
they're
of
0-16.
And they're proud of mediocrity, right? They're proud of ignorance. They're proud of, you know, just immediately removing anything that you're saying. You could have someone as intelligent as Mr. Nance here say everything to a T, and they'll be like fake news, and they just completely write it off. And you're like, first off, go fuck yourself. Second off, let me actually get into like the deep argument of what I'm trying to state here. And it's like, but like you said, facts aren't winning this, so we need to hit them where it really hurts, you know. JD Vance likes to fuck couches and kill popes. That's who he is. Like, that's who he is. We need to lean into it. Don't run from it.
There really does need to be some kind of investigation on, I mean, the dude dies hours later.
Come on.
I mean,
okay, I'm gonna say to both of you
bad
gentlemen.
you gotta go ahead.
I just want to say this to both of you gentlemen. You know the Pope said some real shit to him, and there's no taking it back. There's no taking it back. There's no like, Pope, I learned from what you said to me. Nothing, none of that. He said,
He
you
chewed your
are a
ass, then died.
horrible human being.
And,
And he was
with
out.
my last breath,
I'm gonna go stroke out in the corner.
Straight
I
up.
will say to you,
The crazy
you
part was I thought it
leave
was.
the couch alone.
Leave the couch alone. It's like,
Did you notice? Did you notice they wouldn't let him sit on the couch next to
no,
him? They
they
made him.
wouldn't. Give him a kid seat at the Vatican. Here we go.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
Jesus. No, but you know, I made a video. I said I know a lot of people probably don't realize this, but I'm Catholic because of the way I go it online. But you know, it really is one of those interesting times. We don't get we get to see this like a handful of times in our lifetime to see a pope, you know, be appointed and go through the process, conclave, and all that. I do find that kind of stuff interesting. You know, there's many bad things I can say about the church. This kind of stuff I do, you know, this history and this tradition I find very fascinating.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing is that now, if you think about it, what we're about to witness won an Oscar for best costume design. You know, Conclave, the movie.
He's not wrong.
And but now I got to go watch the movie. I remember
I haven't seen it
was
either.
it the first film that I ever saw this. I'm Catholic also, and raised Catholic all the way through. You know, when I got into college, it was Anthony Quinn, Shoes of the Fisherman. Right? That was one of the first films about, whoa, how do we go through choosing a pope? A humble man. Bullshit. I learned everything I ever needed to know about how to elect a pope by watching, the British version of the TV show about the Medici family.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas the Pope was the ruler of Europe, right? Kings and all the rest of them had to bow down to him. And that's how we got this, you know, the papal nuncio as it exists today is, you know, it's a former self, but a shadow of its former self. But
Yeah.
it controls Latin America. It
Yeah.
still controls. There's a lot of influence in Latin America. And same with, you know, Christian countries like in Central Africa, like Uganda, Rwanda, some of these places that are still Catholic. And the Philippines, can't forget the Philippines, right?
Yep.
The last decent Catholics on earth. So, but we're all going to get a real show here, and everyone's going to go watch it. Netflix is going to break with everyone watching Conclave, just trying to figure out what's going
What's
on.
happening.
You know, what's happening and how the Pope process, how they're elected through hook or by crook.
Malcolm, we were talking about Ryan and I just earlier today, like, how are they going to pick this next pope? Are they going to go more conservative? Are they going to, you know, how is this going to lean? And we didn't really make a bet. We were just saying, like, with the way things are going right now and how this is like a far right movement that's kind of circulating throughout the whole globe, what's going to happen with the Pope? And will that become political?
Yeah, I wrote about this in my book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy. I termed it the axis of autocrats. And that's what's happening in this world, is that Trump wanted to join the axis of autocrats and now has. And it's about to become formal because Trump is going to actually bring the United States into full economic and political alliance with Russia. That's clearly on its way. Steve Witkoff, who is his negotiator in Moscow, has pretty much said that's what he's going to do.
Yeah.
That the United States and Russia, he's not negotiating, by the way, the end of the Ukrainian war. He's there negotiating, bringing economic relief to Russia, and that he's pretty much cutting deals for Russia, for the United States to access Russian oligarch billions, hundreds of billions of dollars that's just frozen over there. He's going to lift sanctions. Absolutely will lift sanctions against Russia. And the way he's going to do it is he's going to blame Ukraine for everything. As a matter of fact, Marco Rubio today was dropping that hint that if you don't, essentially, if you don't give Ukraine, and not just Marco Rubio, it's Marco Rubio and JD Vance today.
Yeah.
Both were saying that the United States is going to walk away from this. And the way that it was described by one European analyst was that the United States was using mafia tactics. Nice country you have. It'd be a shame if something happens to you.
Yep.
Right, there you go. Trump slams Zelensky.
So,
But they're not. The Ukraine is not negotiating. Ukraine is not surrendering.
Correct.
exactly.
And that's the problem. They want Ukraine to surrender. I don't know what they've told them in Moscow, like, we'll give you access to all the minerals there. But this is the first time in a very long time the United States has said, we will defend your existence.
Yeah.
Your existence, but you got to motherfucking pay me. Right? I mean,
Yep.
it's literally straight from Goodfellas. What?
Yeah.
You got cruise missiles coming up? I don't give a fuck. Pay me. You got Andy. You got hypersonic missiles hitting Kiev. I don't give a
Fucking pay
fuck.
me.
Pay me. And this is what they want. It's disgraceful. And I put it this way, just make this very clear. The American people are not siding with Moscow. Trump personally is siding with Moscow.
Yeah.
And this is why we have to, we'll get onto the politics of this later, but this is why we really need to have a people-powered revolution that will change this administration. People
Yeah.
say it can't be done, but it can be done.
I'm with you on
And
that.
he's terrified of it.
Yeah. No,
And-
it's and Ryan and I talk about this all the time. The fact that the middle class is being squeezed, and even with the attack of student loans, and seeing that it's like more of our generation and younger who are now suffocating from these power moves that they're making. When is it that we turn to revolt against this entire administration and remove all of their power? Because
Yep.
if nobody goes to work anymore, I mean, I'm sorry, the French did it. The French Revolution showed everybody that this will be
Well,
completely wiped out. Are we there
you're
yet?
talking-
No.
You're talking to a guy that knows guillotining songs from the French Revolution, right?
But-
Sera, sera, sera. Les
wanna give-
aristocrates à la lanterne, right? Up onto the land for post. But I think that will come. I think we'll shift to that once I've answered some of your other questions.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what the listener here should be doing. And I'm taking part in a new political action committee. I have not announced yet, which will be very fun. But it will be focused on providing that leadership nationally that we're missing, right?
Yeah.
We've got all these, we have a lot of protest groups that are springing up. You have this new one, 5051, awesome work. What is it? Hands off. Yay. Awesome. Move on, indivisible, hit the road, some of these other groups. And it's like, I noticed none of you are working together. So,
Yeah.
but they're having big protests. Why? Because the same people are showing up for every protest.
Yeah.
It's not hands off because, it's hands off, I want to go to their protest. No, every weekend, everybody is showing up. This all needs to be harnessed and coordinated, and it's not being done now. I mean, we
No.
only put out 5 million people. Last I counted, 76.5 million voted for Kamala Harris.
Yep.
Well, it's a combination. We talked about it earlier. I always feel like I'm privileged because I don't have an employer I have to go answer to that signs my paychecks and puts food on my table. So I'm
Right.
a little more free to come out, say things. And I went out to the protest this past weekend, and like you said, it was huge. The support was extremely positive. I think in general, Americans are pissed off.
Median
but you
age is
did- you-
probably
you-
55.
Man, there was kids there. There was
Oh, yeah.
everybody there, and
Good.
I noticed some people covering their faces, and I was there with my brother-in-law, and we kind of I said I get it. They probably have jobs and stuff. They can't get spotted out here and risk losing their job. I get it. But I
Wow.
think like you said, that's why it's so much more important for people like you and I who don't have those restrictions on us to come out here and speak for them. And I'm sure you get them
Absolutely.
even more than I do. You get these DMs, and it's people that tell you exactly that. They're like, you are saying exactly how I feel. I wish, I
Oh,
could
yeah.
publicly, support it, but just know privately that I support what you're doing, and that's enough.
Well, I think we've got to get to the point where we can give them enough backbone to where, look, when there's a mass crowd, it's unless
can't
there's
stop
like
us all.
super advanced surveillance. You can't stop us all, right? We're
Yep.
all fucking Spartacus. So,
Yep.
for you youngins, that's a movie reference from the 60s. So very important that people know that we have their back. And what I say to people, because now I'm shifting from, commenting on the national security aspects of these things, and now I'm into the general politics of it. Because I was on the hit list under Trump. I was pulled
Yeah.
off air for 3 weeks when Bill Barr put out his fake letter about the Mueller report. They pulled me and John Brennan, right, director
Yeah.
of the CIA, and I'm like, I'm with this guy. Okay,
Wow. Wow.
Then 3
Interesting
weeks
list
later,
to
they
end up on.
realized. 3 weeks later, they realized I had said on air for 3 years was right. But the
Yeah.
point is that we have big mouths, and as speakers with big mouths, we have an obligation to speak for people who aren't as shouty as us, right? Like I transitioned from
Yeah.
being Mr. Intelligence Analysis and straight commentary to just being an old Navy freaking chief now, right? I'm
Yep.
just angry all the time, and if I don't have a cup of coffee, I'm gonna kick someone's ass.
But
So
can we
yes,
elaborate on that for a second though? Because I do these things called Ryan rants, and I
right,
get spun up, and I just go all in, and
good.
I try to explain to people, like, you don't get, like, when you're in the military, you have to bite your tongue all the time. Like, you can't let it all out. Like, you have to hold it in. So it's like,
Except when you're at my rank.
well, yeah, yeah, exactly. I never made it that high, so I always had to watch my
oh,
P's and
oh
Q's.
yeah,
But it's like
yeah.
when you
My
get
middle name,
out.
by the way, was "Are you fucking kidding me?"
I had a chief like that actually.
You fucking kidding me?
His was
So good.
actually, "Are you a dumbass?" But
Are you a dumbass?
yeah, he'd just come up and be like, "Are you a dumbass?" He'd be like, "What did I do?" He'd be like, "That rivet ain't right." Yeah, I'm a dumbass. Sorry, sir.
Your mere presence.
But no, it's just when you get out. My wife did 21 years, and when she got out, watching,
Oh, great.
I got to watch the transition and how, the positives and the negatives, right? Because I don't know how you were, but she had to find a new purpose, once she got out. So it was like, it took her time. And so
Yeah.
I just, it's so nice when you can finally be yourself, when you can finally let it out and just be like, I don't have to worry about, my chief or my supervisor coming up to me and being like, why'd you post that on Facebook? Why'd you tweet that out?
Right.
Like, I can say what I
Yeah.
want. And I know that there
Oof.
are soldiers out there that you and I both speak for that don't feel comfortable saying anything right now. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them one bit.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's very true. I mean, I had that issue at MSNBC, right? They would watch every word you put out on the
wow.
internet and call you. And so
Really?
when I was yes, and call you, yes, standards and practices. Oh, Mr. Nance, we're a little concerned about this,
Wow.
and the biggest, Deadpool double fingers up that I did to MSNBC was joining the Ukrainian army, was leaving. I didn't break my contract. My contract was up that month. And just going like, I just spent a month in Ukraine. I reported on, I tried to give you commentary from here. None of you were interested because they had this weird thing, right? They sent journalists to Ukraine. Therefore, they didn't want to hear from anyone but those journalists in the pre-war, right?
Hmm.
Even though I was going everywhere. I went to the literal 70 meters from the Russians
Like,
in
they have both
Luhansk
in
in
you,
the
though. They have a
pre-invasion.
reporter and, yeah, that
They
doesn't
didn't
make
want to
sense.
hear it. They had a thing in their head. And you might recall they had oh, what's his name? Cliff his name is escaping me, but they had their military analyst, former FBI guy, military. He was like a captain in the army, never been in combat, and he was doing the big board, the invasion big board. And this is where they wanted to put me at the, like, starting with Stephanie Rule, 11 p.m. to 3 a.m., which is real time in Ukraine, but it's like that is in prime time. And I didn't care anyway. When I got back from Ukraine, I left Ukraine by complete accident the day of the invasion. We thought the invasion would have started a week earlier. And I had a family problem. And I was two things. I had a family problem. I was going home to get my armor and equipment and turn right around and come back. And then the invasion started literally the minute I landed in Dublin. I had left at 10 p.m. I was on the last flight out of Ukraine, the Lufthansa flight.
Wow.
And then the airport shut down after we took off because they knew
Why?
it was coming.
Was it
Yeah, I
true
mean, we
that
got it.
they didn't think that they were gonna actually end up in a war? Like that week
Yeah,
before, was it what was that time frame like? Especially
I'll
because
tell you. Well, there are two schools of thought about this.
yeah,
Well,
And
yeah.
I was involved in the shit's coming school of thought. So I actually got into it on a MSNBC show with Chris Jansing and some academic that they had brought in there. And I had just come from the Donetsk, right? From Avdiivka. By the way, it took the Russians 4 years to take the hard spot that I was at, which was the
Mm,
command post of the Ukrainian army. 4 years to take that village. And Ukrainians let them have it by, we'll exchange it for 20,000 dead Russians. So I had been down there, and had been briefed by the commander of land warfare. But I noticed things that a lot of other things don't notice as an intelligence professional. I drove every inch of that country except down to Mariupol. I didn't go to Mariupol. I didn't go to Kherson. I didn't go to Odessa. I was heavily concentrated on the north, central, and north. And I drove the road that 40-mile convoy was on. Remember
mm,
that? At the
yeah.
beginning of the war, they had a 40
Stuck
mile
in the mud.
convoy in the woods.
Stuck
I'm
in the
like,
mud.
how the fuck can they get on this road? You're going nowhere. You're all gonna die.
Yeah.
I was there in a Pajero, right? And we got stuck in
Wow.
the mud. I actually tweeted about it. I was like, the mud on our tire. At that time, we were like, you can't even maneuver around. The first vehicle's going to get hit and they're all going to get stuck. And they did. And every night, the Ukrainians were hunting, right? Would come out of their cars. Like the chick who was the NLAW killer, she had the new light anti-tank weapon. And she put NLAWs in her little red, Opal, this little
Get
sedan, and
out.
she would go to the edge of that wood, and then she would come through on, by the way, not just hunting trails. One of the more interesting aspects of Ukrainian culture that I learned is they are ginormous mushroom hunters,
Yeah.
right? And you'll see on weekends 100 cars lined on the side of the road, and everybody's got their little baskets and knives, and they're out there selling these huge, platter-sized mushrooms. So those people know the woods, right? They're good in the woods. And this woman went out with her NLAW, her British NLAW, which is an outstanding anti-tank weapon, and she was just blasting shit left and right. I mean, she had like 10 kills on armored
wow.
vehicles or
Wow.
tanks. And she's like, I ran out of NLAWs. Now I could be doing a lot more. So the reason I'm telling you this story is in the run up to that war, I saw this was coming, um and I also saw that no one in US news media was actually reading the story for what was coming. And as you
Mm.
know, I'm never wrong. Okay. It kills me when I get these MAGA
Sounds
guys
like
like,
somebody,
you're
doesn't it?
always, it's like, well, no,
I see the
no, I
doppelganger right
mean,
here.
oh no. The difference is that I predict it, I write it, and then it comes true,
It happens.
as
Yeah.
opposed to just talking smack, right?
Yep.
And but I get these right wingers like, you're never right about anything, you and your whole Russia hoax, and I'm like,
Mm.
wait, you mean the one that we're still, that he's about
Still.
to sell the United States out for? So I got there and I had it out on Chris Jensen's show, and this guy's like, Russia's going to be able to achieve their objectives in a matter of weeks,
Weeks. I
and
remember that.
Ukraine, they will be on the Polish border. And I just sat there, and then finally she turned to me, and I famously said, "Listen, I don't know where you get your opinion, but I am on the ground here. I've just returned with the battle commanders, right? The commander of land warfare and the commander of this kickoff battlefront who has been fighting these Russians for 3 years. And there's something I think none of you factor into your analysis, and that's that Ukraine has an army and they're already in the field.
Yeah.
And how do I know? Well, I've been around a mobilization. I took part in, Desert Storm and a couple of other wars, invasions. And, there's a lot of traffic. And the traffic you're going to see is usually going to be logistics trucks and fuel trucks. Logistics, fuel, and water, POL,
Water.
right?
Yeah,
Petrol, oil, lubricant. And all your log is going to be moving at night when you can control it, when the Russian satellites aren't watching, when the spies are sleeping. I drove around for 2 weeks and I saw not one real substantial convoy. On occasion, you'd see a truck here, a truck there. And I'm talking about a country that's 18 hours of driving wide, right? And I go, they're in the field. They're duping us out. Zelensky was trying to keep everybody calm. There's not going to be any invasion. Well, General Sirski, who was commander of land warfare, and that's the guy I was briefed by, who is now commander of the entire Ukrainian armed forces, and General Pavlyuk, who was commander of the Joint Task Force in Donetsk and Luhansk, who is now commander of land warfare. These guys are like, yeah, our shit's been in the field for weeks. They broke out their war stocks in mid-January. All of them, every rocket, every artillery, they were deployed for war. Ammo was broken out live, and the only thing we were seeing was probably the orders of nothing moves in this last 2 weeks. We're poised to not to strike. We're poised to, let them come in. And their strategy was let them come in, right? Let them go to the freaking, by the way, best gas station convenience stores on this planet are in Ukraine, right?
I love
The
that.
Oko. Oko has, first off, the national food of Ukraine, which is the wrapped and grilled hot dog.
Ooh.
Love Ukrainian hot dog. And they already got the mustard inside, whatever you want, mustard, ketchup. And then they grill it like on, a George Foreman
like
grill,
a George
right?
Foreman grill. Ooh.
Yeah, and then they
a
sit
panini
it
grill.
up. And
I might need to.
panini grill.
I might need to make some of those.
They're insane, man. They're insane. I lived for months only on Oko hot dogs and double espresso from their automated espresso machines.
There you go.
Because in the first 3 months of the war, it was national crisis. It was national emergency. No alcohol, nothing stronger than a Coke.
Yep.
So, and the gas stations were emptied of everything because people were leaving the country and logistics was screwed up. So anyway, the Russians, we had driven through virtually every square meter of Ukraine, and we knew where all the gas stations were, right? And all these gas stations have the hot dogs, the sandwich section, or the restaurant, and then they have the ginormous wall of liquor. I mean, imagine the biggest liquor store that you've been to, and that's a section of their convenience stores. There was my favorite one was they had a Jack and Coke display next to the front door of all the Okos, and it was a 6-pack of Coke, plastic wrapped with a bottle of Jack Daniels. Okay, stacked in crates next to the door, right? And I as soon as the invasion kicked off, I go, this should take them 3 to 4 days to get to Kyiv, but this is going to take them weeks. They're going to be drunk off their ass every night. And that's exactly what the Ukrainians were waiting for. Every night, their special forces, partisans, individuals, if you wanted to, there's no rules in war, right? You can go Russian hunting and get into these areas of operations and just kill who you want. And that's how the Russians lost the war in the initial invasion. So I had sat there with this woman, like I said, or not woman, this academic, and I go, bro, okay, the Ukrainian army is out and they're going to fight. He's like, yeah, it'll take blah, blah, blah. Well, who was right about that one? I was right about that one.
Wild.
And I was so clear that it was going to happen the way that I predicted. I said on that very show, I said, they will never take Kyiv. Never. I said, it's the size of Chicago and it's got 2 million more people than Chicago. And even if 3 or 4 million leave, that leaves you with 3 million men and little old ladies with Molotov cocktails sitting on the 5th floor of their apartment buildings. Not joking, by the way. These are real.
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
yeah.
Everyone made Molotov cocktails. Everyone.
Yeah.
And they had TV instructions to make sure that you put styrofoam inside it so that when it melted, it stuck to the Russian soldiers' bodies. I mean, at month
Wow.
5, when it was clear Kyiv was saved, the Russians were never coming back, their biggest problem was going around and collecting the cases, millions of bottles of Molotov cocktails. So this is what MSNBC missed, was this on-the-ground analysis, because they were relying on academics. They were relying on this guy with the big board. And when I came back and they were like, oh, we want you to take the midnight to, 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. I go, nope, leaving. My contract's up. And as a matter of fact, my contract was up the day before I made that video statement on MSNBC, which was my coming out to say, to show my support of Ukraine, which, I mean, I work for Ministry of Defense Intelligence. That's their hybrid version of CIA and DIA. And people go, well, you were faking it. You had a rifle. I go, still a rifle, still an issued weapon. You had no magazine. It was 2 a.m. in Ukraine in the middle of an air raid. It was starting to freaking snow. It was minus 3 degrees Celsius, or no, what is that? 27 degrees, right?
Yeah.
And I was freezing. And you get these right-wing guys like, you didn't seat the magazine in your AK-47 correctly. I go, I cleared that weapon 3 times in 2 minutes to ensure there would not be an accidental discharge or negligent discharge on MSNBC. And you motherfuckers, it's like, well, that proves you didn't go to the war. It's like, I spent 10 months in the war, and 6 months of that was on the Kharkiv line.
Said the guy who never served. Yeah.
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 Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's the right wing, right? You get these guys out there who's like, oh, I was a special forces guy. You ain't here, bitch.
No,
You know
they
what? Let me tell you, this is
Sit
as I
down,
like to put it.
Malcolm,
This
they
is
all cosplay, man. They all cosplay.
I know.
Yes.
Oh, they always do that. You LARPed in a hotel room in Poland. I was like, really? Because that artillery is really fucking long range. Listen, you go boom, And it's really funny, but you get these right-wing MAGA types who are like, fuck Ukraine, people who were in the military. And, the only thing that I say to that is I go, oh, I see. Yeah, you're a fluffer for a KGB officer. And we've lost so much knowledge of what bad Soviet Union and the KGB was that now these guys are like, yeah, I fluff Russia. So, but
Well,
that's how that whole leaving MSNBC.
and if
thing
you'll allow
happened.
me here, I want to add a little context. So for those of you who don't know exactly what happened today, Marco Rubio refused to go into a meeting with Zelensky and members of the EU because they're saying Zelensky won't make the deal that Trump wants them to make with Putin and Russia, which is they're saying
Surrender.
that Zelensky should basically just surrender and cough up Crimea so that...
No, it's more than that. He wants to
educate
the
us, sir.
current line of contact, right, which we call the 0 line. They want the current line of contact to freeze, pursuant to negotiating the surrender of all of Donetsk, which they have only taken half, all of Luhansk, which they have only taken half. They were supposed to seize that in the first day. Remember that place I told you I was at, Avdiivka?
Yeah.
I was 70 fucking meters from the Russians when they opened fire on our little press junket. And when I got my briefing, by the way, as I told General Sirski, I go, I'm not a reporter, I'm a spy. I'm just a spy that talks on television. You got a good big laugh out of that. Then weeks later, I was working for him. But it was just really amazing that, then they want they want the entirety of Kherson province and the entirety of Zaporizhia province, behind all of which is Crimea.
Yep.
And let me tell you, Ukraine has managed to really stress Crimea to the point where they could endanger its entire water supply. And the Russians understand that. They know Donald Trump and Marco Rubio are Moscow's negotiators here.
Yes.
And what's happening is really a temper tantrum of Rubio essentially saying, because I know what happened when that door closed and Zelensky met with the Europeans, right? And he was just like, "It's just us, bitches. Let's get it on."
Yeah.
And, because it's now Europe versus with Ukraine versus Russia. And to be honest, Europe has enough military and combat capacity to make Ukraine win. Would it be easier with the United States? Yes. And here's why people in the United States are sort of crying, because the Swedish are up there with their STG 90 super armored personnel carrier, and the Ukrainians love it. It's got a massive chain gun, 30 millimeter automatic cannon on it. The Leopard 1 is kicking ass all across the Ukrainian front. I don't know if you saw the video. There was a duel between a Leopard 1 and a T90 the other day on drone camera. And it hit, we used to practice for in the 80s, right? The Russians coming across the East German frontier. That German tank was hulled down and waiting, and just put one right in its ass, and it exploded. And you're like, oh, I don't know if you guys know what happens when a tank round hits you, right? It burns through the metal, and the tungsten alloy core dart hits so hard, so fast, that it turns into a blob of molten lava. And that blob burns a 1-inch hole through the hull, and then it sprays molten lava goblets that are like 5,000 degrees all through the inside of the tank like a garden hose. And so you are immediately immolated. And then, of course, it's so fast, it flies through and it hits fuel, hydraulics, and then, of course, the standard Russians ring of ammunition around the turret. And you blow up in an insanely spectacular fashion. Whereas if it was a Western tank, it would look like sparks are coming out of the hatch and around the turret ring, like somebody had a blowtorch on the inside blowing out. Ours don't blow up the way the Russians do. It'll definitely kill the tank, but the Russians, they blow up. So all of these things are now the Europeans going, we're going to dominate the global arms market. The United States is literally pulling itself out of the global arms trade.
Correct.
They will be selling weapons to themselves and themselves only. And you know what this also shows? You
And
cannot
Russia.
trust America.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. But if we have our way, we get enough people power in the streets, Trump won't be even in office.
Correct.
He won't be able, him and JD Vance, we'd get him to step down.
So
it sounds fanciful, right? But
with
it's
that,
possible.
I want to take a quick second to give a shout out to our podcast sponsor, which is Justice AI and Christian Ortiz. Justice AI is an AI program that is meant to take bias out of everything. Christian created it because he saw the potential of having an AI that could actually pick apart not just right-wing bias, but left-wing as well. So it's a program that we like to use. We'll even run our scripts for videos through it sometimes. But today I asked it, did the Mueller report determine Russia interfered in the 2016 election? And as you can see, it says that in the 448-page document released in April 2019, yes, it was determined that Russia did interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And it did it in two ways: social media manipulation. The Internet Research Agency, a Russian entity, conducted a social media campaign favoring Donald Trump and disparaging Hillary Clinton. The campaign aimed to sow political and social discord in the U.S. And the second was cyber intrusions and leaks. Russian military intelligence hacked into email accounts of Clinton campaign staff and the Democratic National Committee, releasing stolen materials through platforms like WikiLeaks. So Just AI is a great program. And as you can see, yes, Russia did interfere in the 2016 election and did help Donald Trump. And now when you see what his administration is doing and the things that they're doing to literally help Putin, kind of hard not to connect the two dots and say, yeah, Trump knew.
Yeah. Well, I like the way that Justice AI just condensed 3 of my books down into a matter of sentences. And I noticed across the bottom, you didn't read it. It said, please see Malcolm Nance's Plot to Hack America, which came out 6 weeks before the election.
Did it?
Plot to dish. Yes, it did. I was the first. Yeah, well, no, it didn't.
Oh, Jesus. I'm like, did I seriously miss that and not read it? I was like, man, I'm a horrible host if I missed that.
He'll fall for it.
That Nance guy is awesome.
Yes.
Thanks for that. But fuck both of you. How about that?
Yep, there it is.
AI, man, AI smart.
AI, man.
No,
But I did
really
actually,
is
if you
interesting.
recall, my claim to fame is that I called everything you just read
Yeah.
on July 16th, 2016, when all the news media was hemming and hawing. And I came on Joy Reid, and I said, in front of Independence Hall, I said, the United States is under attack in a cyber warfare, an intelligence and cyber warfare operation designed to elect Donald Trump as president using Russian military intelligence assets.
That's
And they
right.
were like, what?
Yep.
I go, yeah.
Can I ask you
that's
this
what's happening.
question? Did you get a lot of, well, that can't happen? Did you get a lot of people kind of saying that, like kind of dismissing it, like that's almost too crazy for it to happen?
And this is the kicker. That happened on a Monday afternoon, right? And Tuesday afternoon, the next day, Donald Trump goes out, Russia, if you're listening, please release the 30,000 Hillary Clinton emails, because Malcolm's quote yesterday needs to be backed up from the source. I mean, it was like it's like clockwork. That's twice that's happened, by the way. Trump comes out and does something stupid. And when I wrote the next book in 2017, it came out in 2018, called The Plot to Destroy Democracy, how Putin and his spies are undermining America and dismantling the West. Putin and his cyber spies are undermining America and dismantling the West.
Yeah.
It was an entire treatise on how he was buying political groups all around Europe and trying to rig elections and do these things, created the alt-right along with Steve Bannon and other things, funded, the Charlottesville, all these crazy things. I mean, David Duke David Duke, the KKK leader, and the guy Richard Spencer, the leader of the American Nazis, shared an apartment in Moscow that David Duke had bought. So don't tell me this stuff isn't happening. And so when I wrote that, within like a week of the launch of the book came out in the middle of the summer light reading season, and I still made number 6 on the New York Times bestsellers list.
Nice.
And I mean, and who was number 5? It was like Neil deGrasse Tyson's paperback, How to Be a Rocket Scientist, or How to Be a
That's the one I
Quantum
bought.
Physicist. And the number 1, people were like, my editor was like, oh, maybe we can reach number 1. I go, are you shitting me? David fucking Sedaris, his book of light, funny stories.
Yeah, this will top
and
that.
Here's mine: How Do You Topple Democracy by Russia. But I made a good play for it. But the reason I'm making this joke is because, like a week after I reached the Times bestsellers, right, Putin comes out and says, liberal democracy is dead, and Russia will, use all of its national resources to help it along. And I'm like,
we just didn't realize Trump was that national resource.
Page 21.
Right.
That was the third book, The Plot to Betray America, how Team Trump embraced our enemies, and how to fix it.
So,
and obviously my how to fix it didn't work. But
so with that,
we're still working
on it. We're still working on it.
Yeah, it has to be a pop-up storybook for Americans to get. I don't know if you know that.
Jesus Christ!
Not all Americans. Some of us can read past 6th grade level. With that though, we're approaching 2 hours, so I want to ask you one last question. Well, we are, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's why you have to come back on here, because we wanted to talk more with you about all of this. And but with that, I want to ask you a final question.
Mm-hmm.
What are your key, like, national security concerns right now under Trump? And I think particularly asking that in the context of like counterterrorism and global instability. What do you think the number one threat is?
Well, this cuts in every different direction. And I'm going to state this plainly as an intelligence professional. I like to speak, even though I'm a former intelligence professional, I still maintain the values and standards. And I will speak like an old Navy chief, right? Which is with the blade hand. The United States is the single greatest threat to global stability. Donald Trump and his administration is a threat to global democracy. He is joining the axis of autocrats. You guys got to use that phrase. I'm trying to get that to go around. It's not the axis of dictator, axis of autocrats. He wanted in. He's in now. He's
Yeah.
about to cut the deal with Russia to divide the world into three poles, which, by
Yep.
the way, came from Steve Bannon and Alexander Dugin, Putin's philosopher. Russia gets Europe, United States gets the West, and China gets Asia,
Yeah.
but as a competitor. And whatever Putin says, he is so in love with Putin. I mean, it is just psychologically, there has to be some studies done on this. I'm
Because
sure
he knows
some
that that's
NATO
how he
ally
won.
has this.
Without Putin, he doesn't win.
No, it's deeper than that. And I wrote this in Plot
You
to
think?
Betray America, where I went to Putin's office when he was a KGB officer in Dresden, to get a feel for what it would be like to be a young human manipulator, right? That's what human intelligence officers are. They're human manipulators. They get people to become traitors to their country.
Yep.
I think Trump started as an unwitting asset, or as a fellow, at first as a useful idiot, then an unwitting asset, then a fellow traveler, then a witting asset at the end of the 2016 election. He knows they're doing his thing, but he is he is so much in love with East European women, and what he has this fanciful belief that that country and that part of the world. I actually wrote about this in my analysis of ISIS. What drove ISIS with their pornography fetish? Why bin Laden had all this pornography? Last bastion of untapped white women on this planet. That's how MAGA thinks about this. Not joking. You recall in the late 80s when the fall of the Soviet Union, the Russian wife thing happened, right? Hundreds
Yeah.
of thousands of them came to the United States, married some right-wing Christian schlub, never had sex with them, left them, and went off with their Russian
Half their
biker
crap,
boyfriend,
yeah.
Love it.
and take their stuff. They learn quick. But Trump has this insane fascination with Russia,
Yeah.
and he believes it is mountains of gold that he is yet to tap. And Putin has manipulated him every inch of the way, considering that there's KGB surveillance as far back as 1977, when Ivana's father was the reporting entity for Czech intelligence. The Russians saw that this guy's easily manipulated. So that being said, the United States is the greatest threat right now. No, let me rephrase that. Donald Trump's regime is the
Right.
greatest threat to global security.
Right.
The people of the United States, 1/3 of them are duped, 1/3 are too busy to notice, and 1/3 have not consolidated enough to fight at the level that we need to fight. And that's coming, by the way.
Damn.
It's really coming.
That's the perfect way to end it right there. A third of us
Well-
are too busy. A third of us were duped, and the other third of us can't
Haven't
pull
been
it
pushed
together
too
and
far.
organize. Yeah.
Well, we can. I just want to point out to you that, like I said, 76 million people voted against Kamala Harris.
Right.
We should each be asking ourselves every weekend, every Saturday should be dedicated to defending democracy.
Yeah.
And you could give up that time. Don't go to Costco, go to Costco afterwards, and get out there and show it. They say that it takes 3%, 3.5% of the population to create a color revolution or a mass uprising that will change a government. That's 12.5 million people. Our biggest protest has had 5 million. Half of the Kamala Harris voters is 35 million. Half of them.
Yeah.
So we need to get our act together, and I'm providing some leadership. There's a new political action committee opening up called Focused Action, Focused Objectives. Put those acronyms together, and you'll understand what it's called.
Love it.
FAFOPAC.
I enjoy
Love it.
your wit. That's all I have to say.
It's coming. It's coming, and we
Is there-
intend to be the leadership of the revolution, and take no prisoners. We're the Deadpool of the resistance, right? Take
Yeah.
no prisoners. Double fingers up.
Yeah, man.
We are the shoutiest of people. So if you want to join, Ryan,
For-
Well, you
Which
already
I was
know
gonna-
that.
Which I was going to
you're
say to you,
ranting.
for
I'm
the
ready,
younger
man.
generation right now that's paying attention, that's getting involved, how do they get deeper involved besides the protest? With you, with this movement,
Well,
on a local level? How do we start to connect those dots to start really filling in that void of the
simple.
communication?
connect the dots. I mean, one of the things that we're doing with when we launched FAFO Pack, which is is still in development right now, trying to get Robert De Niro as our spokesman.
That'd be funny.
But yeah, well, we got some pretty shouty ass people there,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we're the people that will not apologize for whatever we say in public. Right?
Yep.
It's just like, yeah, you can bite me. So
Yeah.
young people need to understand your life is physically in danger.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that as the old bearded elder, right? This isn't the council from freaking the Matrix. Okay, I'm the general with the double machine guns, and I'm here to tell you your life is in mortal danger, and ain't no amount of raving that's going to help this. So
Yeah.
what you need to do is go to every event and just have fun. The motto, we're putting up our website here, and our motto for FAFO is your fun trouble headquarters of the resistance. And we want you to go to these things and have fun. And we're going to be doing a lot of things over the next few months to get into fun trouble. One of the things I'm proposing is highway overpass takeovers from Maine to Miami. Every overpass, every Saturday, we want to put up messages, simultaneous messages, because those people that aren't interested or concerned, they are interested and concerned when they drive down the highway and they see the American flag turned upside down and there's a message that says Elon's stealing your money. Or the next weekend, Head Start is gone. You have to, or simple messages. The Republicans' meta narrative message in simple terms, right? They, and you've got to go at their belief, and you want to get Trump voters to get so angry that they think about it.
Yep.
Mine's gonna be
you want to
JD.
get the people who are not thinking about it.
Mine's gonna be JD.
What?
Fuck my couch. That's gonna be my sign. So
no. They've got it. We that one's out there. But
You want to know? I'll tell you.
You're telling news stories is what you're telling me.
I'll tell you
here's
the best.
one. JD. Oh, go ahead.
The best sign that I saw when I went out to this protest this past weekend was "I love Dick, I love taters," just not at the same time.
I saw that. Yes, just
I was like,
and
she was the first one I asked. I was like, "Can I please take a photo of your sign?" And she's like, "Hell yeah!" And then I started asking everybody. I was like, "Okay, I love your sign."
My wife's sign, which everyone loved, said it was handmade. It said, "Hey Donald, America hates you as much as Melania."
Ooh,
facts.
Just think about
facts.
But if we're going to get messaging out, we need to take it out of cyberspace and into the physical realm.
Yeah.
So, and so you want to do things like highway overpass takeovers, billboards. When you're done with your sign, staple it somewhere prominent so that people who have to stop at a stop sign see it. In front of my house, I have two ginormous 9-foot banners in nylon. One says, "This house stands with Ukraine." And the other next to it, I had custom made. It said, "This combat veteran swore an oath to the Constitution."
Yep.
And then the last line is, "Not a lying dictator."
Yep.
My house is one of the last houses before you get to the Walmart. So everyone coming from the Eastern County has to go by my sign.
I love that.
Right? And the first thing they want to do is they're going to hear "combat veteran hand salute" with the left hand, right? Benny Hill salute. And then they're going to go, "Wait a minute, they're talking about my guy." And I want them mad all the way to Walmart. And then when they come back, I want them mad again to go, "Well, he's a combat veteran. Why is he mad at Donald? Donald loves the military." Right? No, but the one sign that I had that somebody pulled down, everything, stakes, ropes, posts, pulled it down. My new ones are all under surveillance with floodlights. Was the one that said "truth over lies."
Wow.
Out of all the messages that you get mad about, right?
All the messages, right? So this is where we, as anti-Trumpers. I don't even want to call us progressives, liberals, because it involves Republicans. I was a Republican for a good piece of my career until somebody told me Bill Clinton's BJs were unauthorized, and I was in the Navy, so I was very confused. So,
Hey, if that's
but
all we got to do to get back to Bill Clinton's economy, bring on the blowjobs. I'm just saying.
it should be a budget line item. So, I said that for years. Best economy in American history.
Yeah.
And
Put
that's
that
if
thing in there.
politicians put their real expenses on their reports.
But your listeners should be prepared. Faith OPAC and other groups are coming together in an alliance we call the No Effing Kings Alliance, and
Nice.
several political action committees, and we are going to bring these 5 major groups to message together and march together, and our objective is 36 million at the very least. And if we do that on, maybe if we spoil Trump's birthday on June 14th,
the march,
or well, we don't think he's going to have a parade now. They didn't put in their application
backed out
for
of
the
it?
parade. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I want you to imagine $1 million people on the ellipse, on the shouting, our official chant will be "fuck Donald Trump."
Right.
And
Love it.
so I want you to 1 million people. None of these hey ho ho Donald Trump has got to go.
No.
Right? You fucking suck. You fucking suck.
They were chanting on the side of in Tucson. They were just walking down the street like "fuck Donald Trump."
Right. But now get 35 million people to do that all over the country, and the news media cannot ignore you. The Walmart shopper will attune to that, and they'll go, hey, that looks like fun. And people will have fun. I tell people, have pizza parties, have cookouts, fun trouble. There's good trouble, there's bad trouble. We're introducing fun trouble to the political dynamic here. So don't tell anybody.
Yeah,
Good thing this is
keep that amongst us.
Just,
Keep that
just
amongst
the 31 countries we're downloaded in.
But and Breitbart, right?
But with that, again, thank you for coming on tonight, and I hope you'll come back and fill us in when you guys are really
anytime.
When you guys are really pulling the trigger on that, because you already know I'm in.
Sure.
And I'll drag this one with me too.
You piss people off good. Even you're so suppressed on Twitter. That's why I follow you. I'm like 500 likes. That thing's a murderous 100. If that was a right winger, that'd be 200,000 likes.
Thank you.
So
thank you.
I tell Ryan all the
your
time.
Stuff, and I take notes. I'm like, that's pretty
right. You aren't the only one either. But no, with that said, I just want to, because you've supported me for years, behind the closed doors and sharing my stuff. So we've gotten to talk for a few minutes one other time. So I just wanted to thank you face to face. So nice to finally meet you, and definitely look forward to having you back on the show and working with you on your guys' thing. Because I'm definitely ready to go tell these people to go fuck themselves. And I definitely have no problem setting aside some of my Saturdays. I have to do soccer too, so sometimes I can't go. But other than that, I told Ian offline, I felt very energized after going to our protest here in Tucson last week. It was just nice to see so many people and to see the reactions of people driving by, how it wasn't, a ton of people flicking us off and saying, you're stupid. It was people like, no, you got to keep fighting. And so it made me feel great. And I think that's the direction we need to go. And just like you said, we need to be out in these streets. And I just want to add on one thing before we sign off to piggyback on what you said. If you're somebody who has a social media platform and you don't think you have the time to go out to these protests, I want you to keep something in mind. You can go to a protest for 2 hours and probably get a whole week worth of content. And it would be good content that people want to see. You can turn into positive content like, wow, look at all the people that showed up. Oh, look at all these great signs. Like, they're doing numbers on my social media, just posting the signs that people had. So get out there, pull out your camera phone, record some stuff, put it on your social media, let people see. Like Malcolm said, we got to get out in the streets, but let's also continue to use our social media platforms the way we have been, because it works. If it didn't work, they wouldn't be trying to shut down anything liberal that we get our message out on. So with that, we like to end our shows with a positive. So Ian, what's your positive, brother?
Mine's with my man over here, man. I have to say, Malcolm, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on here. I'm over here fangirling it out, having you on the show. When Ryan texted me, he was like, "We're gonna do this." I go, "I love Nance." I go, "Let's go, let's
Yep.
do this."
It was a very short conversation.
It was a very short conversation. He's like, "I just want to run it by you." I go, "No, if it's Nance, bring him on.
Set it
Let's
up.
go." Like, set this. I go, "Why are you wasting time? Let him know what's going on." Part of this is the movement that I see unfolding.
Yeah.
A lot of positives
Mhm.
can be personal, but on this front, it really more is resonating on what's reverberating with all of us. And my
Right.
biggest thing that I always talk about with Ryan is that we're building community. We need to stay the course. We need to continue to build community. We need to make sure we are bridging as you stated, how there's all these different organizations, but no one's communicating. And I'm like, that's the
Right.
importance of what this show is.
Yep.
Let's get to midterms to make sure that we put a nail in the coffin, but let's then get to the next stage where we never allow this to happen again as a
Right.
society, as America. So my biggest thing is, again, you coming on here, you really solidify what we're trying to do, what we're trying to really bring out there, and then this message to all of our community itself: get involved, get there. So definitely we want to have you come back on. Definitely want to talk more about it. When you're going to drop that knowledge. I know you said you're sitting on something you're not ready to release yet. When you do, please come back. Let us know, because we definitely want to make sure that we get your voice out there, and we definitely want to make sure that we get involved to the full extent.
And then Malcolm, what's something positive that happened to you this week?
Oh, okay. That's an interesting thing. Question. Something positive that
He's
happened
like,
to me
we
this
just
week.
talked about the world ending. Now you want me to say something positive?
Positive. What's that like? I can't remember.
Right. That's why we like
the
to end
funny
the
thing
show
is, I
that way,
used,
though, because it's like we
yeah.
talk about such heavy stuff, and it's like
Well,
it's just a
one
nice way
thing
to
that's
end.
positive is I was invited. I went to the town hall. What's his name? Jim Acosta, Michael Cohen, and
Oh,
Don Lemon had in
very
New York
cool.
City at the 555 Theater off of Broadway,
Okay.
and it had about 200 people that came there, and it was just open to the public, but it was on like a Tuesday night at 6
Yeah.
p.m. or something like that. And when I turned around, the place was packed. And what was really positive was just the attitude of every person who came and participated. And it was really great. And I realized there's a lot to be done here. I just come from a alliance meeting of the forming of the Avengers, the liberal Avengers, down in Washington D.C., where we said we're going to start sewing all these resistance groups together.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was the power, the energy. Problem is, it's a little old, right? I mean, everybody there was like older than me, and I'm 63. So
Amazing.
I'm like, okay, but they are people who understand the stakes. And so I felt great coming out of that. I was mobbed when I left. By the way, Harry Dunn, he wants to join us on this little adventure.
Oh God, I love Harry.
Of a guy who would be like,
love Harry.
The Deadpool of the resistance, right?
Yeah.
So that's exactly what we wanted, and I walked away from that feeling great and realizing I had an enormous amount of work to do.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
That's positive.
So let's see, my positive. For those of you who watch the show, you probably remember where we were supposed to go to a Friday, Wednesday format for the next year because I had gotten tapped for federal jury duty, grand jury. And for those of you who know me well, it probably doesn't shock you that I didn't even make it through the
intro
syllabus. I didn't even make it through the first day.
They didn't make it either. They were like, Ryan, you out.
Well, actually, it had nothing to do with any of that. So I didn't go into it with the mindset of wanting to get out of it. Like for me, it was a hassle because of the show, but that was about it. I was actually kind of looking forward to doing it. And so the first day they're just, going through everything, very military like slideshows and all this kind of stuff. Everything that I already knew because I've watched 2 episodes of, something down at the border. And they're supposed to be done at 5:00. So my mother-in-law was supposed to get off. She's a nurse at the VA. She was supposed to get off and have an 8-hour shift, come take the kids so that Jen could go do something for school. Well, two nurses called in, so she ended up having to work a 12, which totally threw all of our childcare out the window.
Oh yeah.
So, the latest they were supposed to keep us was 5. So I told Jen, I was like, look, just leave at 4:30. I'll be back home by 5:30. The kids won't be home much more than 45 minutes by themselves, which I already wasn't real comfortable with because of the threats, because they have protection orders on my, all that stuff. So we get to like 4:50, 4:55, and she's like still talking. And so I raised my hand and I'm like, hey, like some of us have to go get our kids. Are you going to be much longer? And she gave me like a very dismissive, well, I was told I have to finish, and I can't go get my kids either. And I was like, okay. So I sat there, waited till 5:05, and she stopped doing the presentation she was doing and then moved on to the next chapter. And I was like, as soon as she flipped the page to start talking again, I was like, okay, got up, walked out.
Thanks, bye.
Yep. And I went out to go find one of the other ladies, but the kicker was that courthouse closes at 5, so there was nobody because they already went home. So I just put the little folder they give you, I put it down, and I walk out because I couldn't find anybody else. I'd already raised my hand to try to talk to her. She was dismissive, whatever. So I leave, and I come back the next, for our first day to hear cases, and there's a criminal guy waiting for me, and he's like, so the judge is going to excuse you because you left. And I was like, okay, and I was like, I'm really sorry, I had to go get my kids. And I was like, it was after 5. And he's like, yeah, they went for like another half hour, 45 minutes, and you missed a certain part, so they're not going to have you come in. You got to come see the judge next Wednesday. So I'm like, oh shit. So I go in to see the judge. It's just, I'm thinking it's going to be like it was when they were doing the jury selection, like the courtroom was going to be packed and nope, It was me, the criminal guy, the USADA, the judge, and the transcriptionist. So I'm sitting there, and the judge, he was very cool because the lady lied her ass off about me, by the way. The USADA, if you're watching this, I'm not going to drop your name, but you're a lying ass trying to sit there and get me in trouble. So she tried telling the judge that I left before 5, and I would just simply said, I was like, you guys know you have security cameras down there that'll tell you what time I left, right? And then she tried telling the judge that I took home things that I wasn't supposed to take home, and I was like, no, I didn't. I said I left it down there on the lady's desk. And I said, again, if you check the video, you'd see that I didn't take anything home. And so finally the judge was like, he said, do you have anything to add? And I said, oh, by the way, I said, my kids happen to have protection orders over at the Pima County Courthouse right down the road on a couple of my stalkers because of my chosen profession. And he goes, I'm sorry, what? And I said, yeah. And he goes, what's your profession? I said, I'm a political pundit. And he goes, oh. And he's like, well, I was going to fine you $1,000 and make you write an essay on the importance of a grand jury, serving on a grand jury. He's like, but I'm not going to make you do any of that. He's like, sorry, that you're dealing with that. He's like, I'm just going to go ahead and sign this off. You're good to go. So not only that, but then I got a check. Like they paid me to chew my ass and send me home.
Well, ours is ours.
So the American dream.
So the judge was amazing. He took all the information I had. He heard it, and he was like, okay, clearly he's like, you weren't. And that was the other thing. The criminal guy who sent me home the one day, he stood up. I think he saw what the USADA was kind of trying to do, and he stood up for me, and he's like, I just wanted to add that, when I told him, he was very apologetic, very nice, and the judge asked him, did you have any issue getting him out of the courthouse? And the judge was like, no, or the guy was like, no, he was perfectly good, and shook my hand and turned around and walked out. So he did show up, like he wasn't trying to get out of it. He did show up. So I think that saved my ass too, but it was a really interesting experience. The judge was great. The USADA can kiss my ass. But outside of that, yeah. You got anything to add, Ian?
No, man. No, this is great. Malcolm, definitely really appreciate you making time for us and letting us know a number of tidbits that we need to be looking forward to. But your stories, your insight is really well needed.
And if you guys, again, all of his books, I think I read all of them. If not, I'm sorry if I missed any. But he's got books that you can go order on Amazon. So just go type his name in, Malcolm Nance, Nance, for those of you who are just listening. Go buy his books. You might actually learn something good. I'm going to go buy a couple. I read the back cover of one reading up, and I was like, I think I'm going to go buy that book. So with that said, Malcolm, we look forward to having you back on the show. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time, and keep fighting out there, brother, because you're on the front lines doing the real work. So you ever need anything from us, you know where to find us.
Will do. Thanks, guys.
Yes, sir. With that said, I'm going to leave you all, as I always do, with much love. Keep fighting, and whatever you do, stay safe out there.